essentially the idea came because as I was walking out of my first startup, I realized I had done some things well. I also realized that I had lacked in doing a lot of things well as an entrepreneur. And the question was, if I am to do it again in my life, what kind of skills do I need to build? So I basically started looking at schools which help people become entrepreneurs. And that is where Stanford was, of course, a top contender there.
How did you even reach out to these people as a young student, getting an endorsement from the president and from stalwarts in the field? What was the process like? Were you nervous? Were you scared when you approached them?
And I didn't want to ask parents for money, right? I mean, I didn't need to, and I didn't want to, frankly, right? I wanted to do this without. So yeah, they put in a little bit, but I was like, listen, this is what I have. They came back with a financial aid package of fellowship, some loans, and all of that in the US without any collaterals. I know all schools don't do it. I don't know what it is now, but all schools don't do it. I got a loan at like 3% annum rate, thanks to Stanford and its relationships.
Hey, Ishan, welcome to Network Capital. You don't need an introduction to what we're doing since you've seen us all from the beginning. You've had a really interesting journey, engineering, MBA, then loads of adventures in EdTech, and then at companies like PayTM. The list goes on and on. What I love to do is to start by telling us about who you are and how do you like to be introduced? What's your way to be introduced to the world?
So I always say I'm an engineer by degree, an MBA by profession, and an entrepreneur by heart. So that's how I would love to get introduced.
Yeah, I think a lot of people already know your background. But tell me about the early days. Like, what was college like in engineering school? Were you always inspired by starting something of your own, or were you interested in diving deep into tech? What sort of an engineer were you?
I was an accidental entrepreneur in college, frankly. So, I went to Delhi Institute of Technology, or what is called as Netaji Subhas Institute of Technology in University of Delhi. I was studying there. This so happened that, 4 or 5, there's a group of high school friends. One of them went to IIT, one of them went to IIT Delhi, one went to IIT Bombay, IIT Kanpur. And we all just kind of got together in December for our first break, and we're kind of discussing stuff. Like, dude, this is a downer. Like, we thought this would be like life-changing, but it's like, okay, like what is happening, right? And one of them just said, let's do something to fix it, like the quality of education being delivered in colleges. And over this, I still remember this vividly, over this, like, I think dinner, Domino's table dinner in somewhere in Delhi University area, we just said, let's just do some classes. And that really became the foundation of my first entrepreneurial venture, which was like as a student entrepreneur when I started Appin, along with few friends, where we delivered offline trainings. And this is like 2004. I'm like in my third year of undergrad. We just like, none of us had business background, but we're just like getting stuff together, right? Incorporating a company, doing some marketing through posters. There was no like WhatsApp or Facebook. So there was very little distraction also for our target audience, which was college students. But we just built a company there, hired a place to deliver classes, built some curriculum. And, I became an entrepreneur, frankly.
In third year of college, yeah. What was the core problem that you're trying to solve, and who were your target audience?
Core problem was that first of all, the core problems when you're a student, they are very simple, right? So the core problem was the education being given in college is just not relevant enough and practical enough. Can we solve for that and make our fellow engineering students better engineers when they graduate? So target audience was engineering students across colleges.
And were you interested in giving them more technical training or life skills or a bit of both?
We started with technical training mostly. So embedded systems, cybersecurity, networking, courses like those, which would just really skill them up for their first roles post-college. That's how the company started. And I always say with great fondness, I think to me what I realized was that a student coming out of a classroom was either really excited that, oh, I learned something new, this is great, I want to do this. Sometimes students came out saying, I don't want to do this. This is utterly boring or not my cup of tea. And I was really excited to see both the outcomes, where you're helping someone figure out what they can do next, but we're also helping someone by them letting spend just few hours to figure out what they don't want to do next. And I think the process of elimination is as valuable as a process of selection, right? So for me, it was a great outcome to see people loving it or just not liking it at all, but just were in a better position to make a decision for themselves on what they want to do next.
So did the company do well while you were in third year, fourth year, beyond?
Company did well as student entrepreneurs. I mean, we all fun, company did well, but there was no definition of well at that point. I mean, we're talking of 2004, 5 student entrepreneurship in India. I mean, there were no KPIs.
Way before it was, fashionable or aspirational.
Fashionable, right? Like I was literally probably the first student entrepreneur in my college in like last few years. At that point, I had to take special permission from the principal to like skip classes and do this and all of that, right? So it was successful for my learning. Let me put it like this. Learned a lot, and it kind of gave me a direction to follow. And literally after wrapping my work there, I went to Stanford Business School for my MBA as a 24-year-old in 2007. So
immediately,
I think it was great. Yes, immediately after my undergrad. So I was one of the younger ones in the class.
Yeah, significantly younger. So do you remember a bit about applying to Stanford, or where did the idea even come from? It's always been so competitive, but getting in right after NSIT would have been, I think, quite a feat.
I mean, first of all, I consider myself very privileged and lucky about it. I didn't think I would crack it when I started the process. But, essentially the idea came because as I was walking out of my first startup, I realized I had done some things well. I also realized that I had lacked in doing a lot of things well as an entrepreneur. And the question was, if I am to do it again in my life, what kind of skills do I need to build? So I basically started looking at schools which help people become entrepreneurs. And that is where Stanford was, of course, a top contender there. And I can go and say contender now, but Stanford was top of the wish list. Let me put it like that, right?
Yeah.
So I applied to a few schools, and then I got lucky, and Stanford found something compelling in my application. I think one of the things was that I'd written a book, just coming out of undergrad, which was on my experiences as an entrepreneur, and that book had a foreword by then president. It had a message on the book by then president, late Dr. Abdul Kalam. It had a foreword by Sabir Bhatia, plus few more people from India had written in the book, Rajinder Pawar, Kiran Majumdar-Shaw, whom I had reached out to all of them, and they'd written in the book. And I think that book probably added to the application. So I was just fortunate that Stanford found my application compelling enough and gave me an offer to join there in 2007.
But this is incredible. How did you even reach out to these people as a young student, getting an endorsement from the president and from stalwarts in the field? What was the process like? Were you nervous? Were you scared when you approached them?
I want to go back and say that it was an uncluttered world digitally, right? So I wish I had a great answer for you, which is some magic process. I just emailed them, including the president of India. And I can go on the more detail on the president, but Sabir Bhatia emailed, Kiran Majumdar-Shaw, Rajinder Pawar, Ashley Lobo, who was a dancer, Dilip Cherian, the PR guru, and so on and so forth. So I just literally found their emails and emailed them, and they responded. And I learned in life that you got to ask. You can ask.
You got to ask. If you don't ask, you don't.
Got to ask. Correct. And some people said no. A lot of interesting people said no also, that no, I don't want to do this. This doesn't make any sense. Some people said yes. I met Milind Soman in Delhi, and over a car ride, I kind of recorded his interview for the book, right? So, the people saying yes and people saying no, but I think it was just a fun exercise. Present story is interesting. I didn't know how to reach out to President of India.
Nobody
I mean,
does. Tell us all
yeah.
about
So,
it. Yeah.
so 2006, writing the book, I see there is a website called as abdulkalam.com.
Hmm.
And it finds a mention on the official website of the Rashtrapati Bhavan, which means that somebody official is managing it, right?
Yeah.
So I go into the database of internet registry databases to see who owns the domain name. And I was hoping to help that President Kalam does not own it, but somebody else does. And it turned out that a gentleman by the name of V. Ponraj owned it. And then I Googled V. Ponraj, and it turns out that he was sort of the chief technologist and a very close confidant of President Kalam, working in Rashtrapati Bhavan in the president's house at that point.
I see.
His phone number was there on that internet search. So I picked up the phone and called him. And I said, Mr. Ponraj, I saw that you own abdulkalam.com and you work very closely with Dr. Kalam. Is there a way that you could pass my message on to him, and if I could get some time with him to write an endorsement for us on the book? He said, okay, I'll check. I was like, okay, cool. And a few days later, I got a call from President's house saying, you've been invited to come to meet Dr. Kalam. Bring your book and come and meet him. So
was it like your manuscript was ready and you went with the manuscript?
The book was, yes, the book was ready with the manuscript. He read some of it. We told him we were doing programs in nanotechnology and embedded systems and this, and he was excited. And then he's like, what can I do for you? As a 24-year-old, I was never prepared for a question being asked by the president of the country, what can I do for you? I was like, I don't know, you can potentially do a lot of things for us, but would you just be willing to write in the book? And he took a business card of his, which is basically like a card that has the Indian emblem embossed on it and says President of India. And he wrote a message behind it and signed it. And he said, here is the message. I said, can I just write it on the book? Like, don't have to take like permissions from someone. He's like, I signed it. You can take it and write it.
Wow.
And I gave it to the publisher. And then he was talking. I can go on the story. It's one of my favorite lifetime stories, but he's telling stuff. And I was always a kind of naughty student in class. I would never pay attention to professors all that much. So in between, he's like, Ishan, you're not paying attention. I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. I'm writing notes. So, my co-founder of the company, my co-author, co-founder of my first company was also there, wrote notes. At the end, he very sweetly said, would you like a photograph for the book as well? I was like, yes, of course. But we got a camera and the security took the camera away. So I don't have a camera with me. And that time the phones weren't, there was no iPhone like in the hand. We had some old dinky phone. So he's like, don't worry about that. He calls up a number. A door opens in his big room. Somebody comes in with a camera. He tells us, Ishan, stand here. He tells to my co-founder, stand here. Like a very professorial style, like stand here, both of you. We all stand. Photograph is taken and it is shipped to us in a few days. And that photo went on the book as well. One of my most incredible meetings in my life.
I can imagine. And as a 24-year-old, this must have been, in a way, like inspiring, path defining in so many ways. What did you leave the meeting thinking about yourself and your aspirations and, just your country in general?
Humility of Dr. Kalam. When I entered the president's house, there were kids running all over the building. Like there was all these people visiting inside, not like outside, not like Mughal gardens, like inside. There were like kids running all over, and we were taken to this place and made to sit there, and we were served some like this just simple South Indian snacks were served to us. And then somebody came and said, Dr. Kalam is running a little late. Is that okay? Like, yeah, that's okay. Absolutely okay. And then we went in and we talked, and his room was this huge room with books all over the place. He had a huge library. But in all of this was simplicity of this person, which was just mind-boggling for how much he had achieved and what he was at that point in the country. I mean, the first citizen of the country. Over time, I met him twice more. When I went to Stanford, I took a study trip to India. And he was kind enough to call I reached out to Mr. Ponraj, who set us some time with Dr. Kalam. We went and met him. There was another time I went to his house to meet Mr. Ponraj, and I knock on the door. He's not the president anymore. I knock on the door. Guess who opens the door? Dr. Kalam. And the question asks is, whom are you here to meet? I'm like, I'm now 27, 28. I'm like, he was ex-president of the country. He's opening the door of his house and asking me, whom have I come to meet? Like, difficult to describe those kind of just moments where you realize that how to manage humility, right? And I said, I'm here to meet Mr. Ponraj. I met Mr. Ponraj. Dr. Kalam is taking a walk outside in the garden, just normally, right? So for me, I felt series of experiences with Dr. Kalam really made me understand humility a lot. And I try to, whenever I'm going off track, I try to go back to that experience and give myself a lesson or two.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I know you for so many years, and hearing this story just makes me just look at your entire career in a very different way, because some of the early experiences in our lives, we never forget them, right? They're such an important message on our entire existence, so to speak. Did it come up in your Stanford interview as well, the MBA interview? How was that like?
Yeah, I mean, it was when I sent a copy of the book, and it said that it was with the president. So I'm sure it came up. I don't remember that exactly, but yeah, I'm sure the discussion president came up, and it kept on coming up. And then later on, as I said, right at the end of first year, when I got a study trip to India, I mean, meeting an ex-president was part of the itinerary. So it was a solid trip. We went to his house with like 30 people into his house, and he refused. We took a couple of gifts for him, and he refused to take them. And he said the only gifts he takes are books. We didn't have a book, so I later on sent him a book as a token of appreciation. So I mean, it kept on coming up. But like you're right, absolutely right. It's those experiences just lie somewhere deep in your memory, and they shape you as a person.
When you applied to Stanford, or when you were writing down your application focused on the long-term goals, what did you write? And were you clear about what you wanted to do, what problem you wanted to solve?
No. And I think very few are. In fact, Stanford has a very famous question: what matters to you most and why?
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't talk about it, but I'm happy to share it on this forum. I wrote, following my dreams matters to me most. Why? Because it makes me feel most alive. And I said, I don't know what my dreams will be, because dreams should keep on changing as you evolve.
As we evolve, yes.
So that's what I wrote. So I said, I don't know what the future will hold, but there was still a question there: where do you see 5 years from now? So I just have to write it. I wrote, I want to go to Stanford and learn what could I have done better as a first-time entrepreneur. How could I become a better entrepreneur? I want to learn that. And then I want to go back to India and be part of the education sector and do something there. And for the next 5 to 6 years, I wrote that. And I said, why do I want to do that? And whys are always more important than hows. I said, why do I want to do that? Because I feel that giving people access to education will be a key way to drive upward economic mobility for people. So I wrote this. And I'm so glad that after graduating from business school, I was able to come back to India and do exactly that by starting EduCard and running it for 5 to 6 years. So I'm very fortunate that what I thought I would do, I was actually able to do it over the next few years.
And what was EduCard's thesis like? And how did sort of Stanford and perhaps NSIT and your other previous experiences play into that role? Because look, you already understood education to some extent, and you got wonderful education. So how did that shape your EduCard experience?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think my undergrad education was very interesting in India, but then when I came to Stanford, I realized what is the level of education, the cross-functional, the cross-university associations, the networks, the access to people, opportunities, right? Just another level. And I know that not everyone can get it, right? So like, what can I do to help Indians get more access to quality education? And that's where the marketplace idea seemed viable to me.
Hmm.
That, there are hundreds of programs that say, for example, an online MBA or an MBA or a certification course in digital marketing or a program in project, like a certification course in project management. How do you choose? How do you compare them? How do you contrast them? How do you know which one is credentialed versus not?
Yeah.
What is the rating? Nobody was doing that kind of marketplace. That's what the hypothesis was, that if you provide this information very clearly, then people will be able to make the right kind of choice. And from a business model point of view, you drive enrollment right there. And then you can make part of the fees as your commission and build a business. I mean, in a simple way, if you think of it, it's like, I think the closest comparison I think of is like Policy Bazaar, where you choose a very important insurance. It's a thought through decision. It's not like buying a shirt or a mobile phone cover. It's a thought through decision. And you're going to take one or two, not more than that, right? You're going to take one life insurance, one health insurance, and so on and so forth, right? Mostly. Similarly, in education, you're going to do one MBA. It's not like you're going to enroll for an MBA program and say, oh, I don't like it, I'm going to do another. Because you're not just putting in your money, but you're putting in your time. And time is way more valuable. Right. So I think so. Essentially, that was the gist of it, that can you help a student find the right program that will suffice their aspirations and help them move forward? That's how EduCard came into existence.
And did it come into existence as an idea while you were an MBA student, or after you came back to India and thought about it? And like, what was the first 100 days like?
I love your intuition of asking questions. I mean, like, these are the things you've never talked about, and you're kind of, the questions coming out are very interesting. So yes, that's what I think is incredible about communities like the business school community at Stanford. There was a class which was called as Entrepreneurship and Venture Capital. That class was taken by Eric Schmidt, who was then the CEO of Google, along with Peter Wendell, managing partner of Sierra Ventures, the prestigious VC firm in the US. The assignment of that class was to create a business plan. That was the project. So the whole classes were geared towards. It was incredibly fun to study from Eric Schmidt for like a quarter. Every week he would fly, he would come in and do the classes. This was also the time when he was serving as a technology advisor to Obama, who was coming up as a prime president of the country at that point. So he was like this busy shuttling between San Francisco and Washington, but he would always come for the classes, which is just incredible, the commitment. So as part of this, I was matched with a Filipino classmate of mine, a Peruvian classmate of mine, and an American classmate of mine. So 4 of us are in this group, and they're like, what should we do? And again, a humbling moment was when everybody said, Ishan, listen, you are most passionate among all of us you have the highest chance of becoming an entrepreneur the first after business school among all of us. I said, fair enough. And they said, therefore, we collectively decided that we would want to together work on a plan that you are thinking, so that we can all help you in getting to that goal. And I was like, wow, that's like incredible that I just got support of like a top-notch consultant from his past life, a banker, like an entrepreneur, all together helping me. Like, if I put a dollar value to it, it's hundreds of thousands of dollars that they're going to spend from their time. So we all came together and we made a first model of EduCard. It wasn't like EduCard, it was something else, but that time spent in the class became the foundation block of the business model and the investment thesis and the deck and all that came later on when I came to India. I started this a year and a half later. But yes, so the roots can be traced back to Stanford completely.
Yeah.
So you're right. People are not able to make that connect all that often.
Tell me, Ishan, MBA at a top school is actually quite a financial investment as well. Were you nervous starting up right after, maybe not going in for the regular job, paying off the debt, or were you thinking of another route?
No, absolutely. I come from a middle-class family. My parents have done well for themselves, but that doesn't mean that there is wealth enough to just make an MBA program. I think, and I had not had any like formal work experience where I had savings with me. So it was tricky, but two things, right? The beauty of a top-notch program is that they actually make decisions independent of your financial status, right? It's financially blind decisions. And they say, if we select you and you accept, we'll collectively figure out how you're going to pay for it.
Yeah.
So a combination of scholarships, aids, loans, and everything. Right. So once I got selected, they sent me saying, listen, here is the form, you're going to fill it. What is your net worth today? Which is like nothing. And I didn't want to ask parents for money, right? I mean, I didn't need to, and I didn't want to, frankly, right? I wanted to do this without. So yeah, they put in a little bit, but I was like, listen, this is what I have. They came back with a financial aid package of fellowship, some loans, and all of that in the US without any collaterals. I know all schools don't do it. I don't know what it is now, but all schools don't do it. I got a loan at like 3% annum rate, thanks to Stanford and its relationships. And I took that, and then, you know, I was used to joke, every quarter money would just come into my account from that loan and that fellowship. So I never paid from home. Of course, I came out with a big student debt at the end of it. But I also realized that I don't need to pay it at once. I don't need to be in this anxiety that I need to pay it every day. It took me 12 years to pay it. And I literally closed it last year after coming to US. But you know what? When people would ask me, is it worth that investment? I would say, listen, some people end up buying, like if I talk from an Indian mindset, some people end up buying a property as an investment asset.
Yeah.
Some people end up investing in shares. I think investing in your own education. Now we can keep the whole argument of student debt aside, you know, for now, but like investing in your own education is just like buying a property. It will give you returns throughout your life. And it continues to give me returns throughout my life, right? I can't even tell you how many times it has kicked in to give me returns, financial, network, support, whatever, everything, relationships, friendships, right? So to me, that was an investment, well made. Just like any other investment, I had to pay monthly for it, but it was fine. Was it anxiety driven? A little bit, yes. But I always tell people that go do it. Like come to a place where you can offer from a business school or whichever you want to, whatever you want to do, and then you can figure out how to solve for it. Don't solve for the finance problem upfront without having the right offer in your hand.
The clarity is so important. And, you know, just like network is really important, and it comes up over and over again. I don't know if I told you this. I met one of your classmates in Davos a few years back on a completely random evening.
Who was that?
I think Mark Thiel is his name. He's a senior partner or something at McKinsey. And I don't know how you came up in that conversation, but you did. And then, you know, hey, I know that guy. I went to school with him. And, you know, I'm constantly amazed by how small the world is. And I asked him, are you like anywhere related to Peter Thiel? I said, I wish I'm not, but I am German. And, you know, it's just like, it was an evening.
So you met Alexander Thiel.
Alexander Thiel. Yeah.
Great guy. You know what? I just talked to him like a few weeks back, and we just had a quick conversation, right? And we hadn't talked in a decade, but like, yeah, I mean, that makes me feel very warm that Alex, great guy, a partner, is in Germany, he's a partner at McKinsey, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and we met 2 winters back, like, you know, before the world shut down.
Yeah, and that's just the beauty of that network.
Yeah, it's always like, you know, intersection of interesting people doing interesting things. I find it fascinating. So Ishan, like, you know, you're doing all of this. Educart does have a you know, long run by any standard, like 5-6 years, does well, and it also has like what you call financially good ending, I would imagine. I'm obviously not sure of the numbers, but were you satisfied with the way things concluded, and when did you decide to sort of move on to the next adventure?
Yeah, so actually, to be honest, it was acqui-hired by PayTM. So, you know, it wasn't the numbers. Frankly, it wasn't an outcome like a typical success outcome. I look at it as an outcome where I learned a lot. The team learned a lot. It was a 40-50 people team. And, you know, we had raised some money. So to be honest, I think the product market fit came very late for us. That's on me as an entrepreneur.
You were slightly early in the market,
early in the market. And, you know, the model evolved over time. I mean, it's always easy to tell a story looking back and connecting the dots. But I mean, to be honest, the product market fit took time. And I mean, the ecosystem of angel investing and venture capital was still evolving. And in some ways, you know, we kind of got lost in that time, diluted a lot, and all of that happened. And at some point, I realized that whatever we are raising and the way we need to build it, like suboptimal raise will not be helpful in that business. And these are best years of my working life and the team, and I need to be very respectful of that. It is important for entrepreneurs to know when to stop also.
Yeah.
And I had my moment of knowing, like, this is the time to stop. So I called up Vijay Shekhar Sharma, who had always been a mentor for me. I mean, no
How
story
did you
will be
know him
complete.
from what, DC and SIT?
Also, because I had worked at PayTM before.
I see.
When I came to India, so I worked with him, and I got introduced to him because a professor of mine at Stanford went to DC with him. And one day when I was telling this professor, hey, I want to go to India, whom should I work with? He's like, oh, Vijay is a great guy to work with. I'm like, who's Vijay? He said, go talk to him. So anyway, so Vijay was my first investor at Educa.
Who was this professor?
His name is Professor Siddharth Narayanan.
Okay.
He was in DC. He was a DC alum, and then he was teaching a course. And the joke was, I didn't do very well in his program. So when he's like, I'm going to introduce, so he's like, oh, I'll introduce you to Vijay. I'm like, Professor Sridhar, sorry, not Siddharth, Sridhar Narayanan. I'm like, Sridhar, I haven't been doing really well in your class. Are you sure you're going to introduce me? And you know what he said? Again, a learning moment. He said, Ishan, how much time you pay attention in my class and how you do has nothing to do with the rest of you.
Phenomenal.
That's the choice you are making in the class of how much you want to invest in it. I'm not going to judge you either ways by that.
Yeah.
That was an incredible learning. You think of it, it's very deep. Like we end up judging people in one facet versus thinking of a complete picture of theirs, right? So I was like, great. And then he introduced me to Vijay, and I talked to Vijay, and it was fun. And that's a long story. I can go into it. But coming back, Vijay was the first investor, continuously supported us. He was on the board of Educa. And then at one point in 2016, I reached out to him saying, Vijay, we're not able to raise the right kind of round. It's a great team. He said, I know your team. He said, why don't we just get the team over? Now, PayTM, from the time I left it in my first year in 2011 to 2016, had gone on from a $500 million valued company to this 10 billion or like a decacorn. With Alibaba and SoftBank already being investors, right? And things are happening. So he's like, just bring your team over. I said, why? He said, we're starting an education practice for fintech, for the wallet. You have a strong team. So the team got actually hired. And I think many of those people are still there doing really well across PayTM. They're product managers, they're senior leaders in education field, others doing really well. And that was great to give the team a landing into a bigger company. This is also the time when startups in India were getting really bashed up about entrepreneurs or shutting down companies or whatever, and then not thinking about their employees or just laying off people and all of that, right? So to me, it was very important that this group of people who have done such incredible work with me, they need to be placed in the right place. And I also got a great role at PayTM. Vijay said, Ishan, there are a lot of problems and challenges to look at. Find one for yourself and do it, right? So that was my re-entry into PayTM in some ways.
In 2016.
In 2016. And the team went in. It was great. And this was the time when demonetization happened, a few months after we all went in. So I'm going to actually use Evergreen as an example now, right? Like literally the same visual. Here is a ship going, large ship called PayTM going in a certain direction. And boom comes demonetization. And next morning is an opportunity of lifetime for PayTM. Incredible to see how Vijay maneuvered this huge ship around without it getting stuck in the canal and taking it to seize on that opportunity, including a very famous ad that came in next morning in the newspaper saying use PayTM.
All newspapers.
I mean, it was incredible, right? Front page. And I was part of that, seeing it. Just seeing how an entrepreneur was literally taking, PayTM is a huge ship, but literally making whole of PayTM into a merchant acquisition engine overnight. Everybody was acquiring merchants. I went to my parents and I'm like, you are doctors. How will you take money from your patients tomorrow? I'm going to get you a PayTM QR code. So I go to office, print a code, put it on their chambers. Like literally everybody was acquiring. I go to Nathu Sweets in Delhi, they're friends. And I'm like, how will you people pay you for mithai? Like you got a pay, right? Like literally everybody was an acquisition engine. So all of that happened. For me personally, that is the time when I got a ping from Udacity saying, we're looking for a managing director for India. So I left in 2016 end, but it was the most exciting 9-10 months that I my second stint in PayTM that I spent. And incredible learning lessons to see how do you immediately change the focus of a company at scale. This is not a 10 people startup. This is at scale of thousands of people and make them focus when an opportunity like this comes to you once in a lifetime. So it was great to see that.
That must have been phenomenal learning experience. And Vijay is obviously a bundle of energy and insights. And
of course.
He's done incredible stuff. I've heard you previously talk very fondly of your time with Vijay. Could you dive deep into a couple of things? One is that a lot of our listeners now with the summer school are school students, so they may not understand what is an acqui-hire. Could you explain that a bit? And second would be, this is also a question for a college and school student. How would you explain the key lessons of working with Vijay? Like, what is an importance of a relatable mentor? What was the role of Vijay's guidance, perhaps, in your own professional journey?
Sure. So to your first question, what is an acqui-hire? An acqui-hire is when you acquire a team for what all they can do versus really acquiring the whole business. So what is valuable is the team in the acquirer's mindset more than the business. If you think of it, PayTM wasn't building an education marketplace. They didn't need the platform. They were building an education payment business for which they needed people who could enroll a lot of colleges and institutions on PayTM platform. Now EduCard was doing relationships with universities. So I had people who knew how to do it and engineers and all of that. So PayTM essentially took this team and gave them offers and made them part of the PayTM business, and they became PayTM employees. So in some ways, EduCard team merged into PayTM. That's what is an acqui-hire, acquisition for the talent of the team. So they were all given stock options and team options. So that the second question is, what are my lessons from Vijay?
Lessons from Vijay. One thing we constantly keep emphasizing on Network Capital is that build a tribe of mentors, and relatable mentors have a huge role to play. But you can't normally go and ask people, kid, will you be my mentor? Will you be my mentor? You have to sort of do work together, develop shared context. But to enunciate that point, I often ask people we host on Network Capital masterclasses to tell them, who've been some mentors who really shaped their thinking. In your case, it seems like Vijay is somebody you've interfaced with a lot. So maybe what lessons have you gleaned?
I mean, we can have another full session on that. Like I can keep on talking about that for hours. Overall, I worked at PayTM for almost 18 months first stint, 9 months second stint, 27 months. Plus, I've seen Vijay closely as he grew from founder of 197, a company, Series B, Series C company, to the PayTM of today. I actually, interestingly, wrote a article. I penned down an article in I think in a newspaper around find a mentor for yourself, and I talked about my relationship with Vijay. I'm happy to share that in the larger group as well. It's available.
Yeah, online. We'll put it on show notes for this particular session.
Yeah, but I think a lot of things. First of it was context resetting is one thing I learned. Right? I mean, a person like that is going from meeting to meeting with context switching. You can't carry your moods inside because not every meeting is great. Somewhere you're pushing people, somewhere you're listening, somewhere it's hard conversation, somewhere fun conversation. So I would just look at Vijay and I would ask him, how do you manage that? And he would just say, reset, Ishan, reset, do whatever it takes, but you got to reset between the two meetings, right? So I've tried to take that very, very deeply with me because as leaders, that's what the role becomes. You continuously go from meeting to meeting and people are looking up to you for either decisions or helping them or brainstorming with them or whatever. You need to be very clear what each meeting is about. Otherwise, you single-handedly have the power to destroy every meeting and the company culture, therefore. So I think to me, that was a big lesson that I learned from Vijay at a very personal mentor-mentee level, right? You can see that lesson. You can only learn that lesson when you are seeing someone inside a room, not from outside.
when you see them working, taking decisions, reacting to people in a certain way.
Yep, totally. Yeah, completely. Second, dream big, even if you are the underdog. Because underdogs really have a chance to win because they're in the race and there is less focus on them. PayTM is not an overnight success by any means. 197 as a company had already been in existence for almost 7 to 8 years when I joined it in 2009 as 197 Communications Limited, the parent company of PayTM. The PayTM brand itself came into existence somewhere around that time, 7 8 years after the company had been formed. It's already been 10 years plus since then.
Yeah,
and it is still growing. 12 years. Warren Buffett did not invest on day one. Neither did SoftBank, neither did Jack Ma, neither did SAP, right? They all came at different points in time. Today, if you look at it, it looks like an incredible journey. And it almost feels like an overnight journey. No, there were many, many ups and downs. How do you make sure that you can survive in those ups and downs? I think one of the key ways is by thinking big and realizing that even if you're an underdog, it doesn't matter because you must leverage being an underdog. If you're an underdog, you have the element of surprising people with performance, with grit, with determination, and then really going for the kill.
Yeah.
And I think that is something that I honestly feel that Vijay has done very well. And he always used to tell me that if I'm underdog, never count underdogs out, right? They are the ones who actually make the change.
Phenomenal.
I think that's the second learning. Again, as I said, I can talk for hours, but like I think to me, those are the top.
Yeah.
No, just I will say one more thing. He's incredibly generous with his close group of people. Incredibly generous. He's such a kind-hearted soul there. Believer in entrepreneurship and ecosystem. At one point, he would tell me, Ishan, I don't know how many angel investments I've made. I have no track of them. Because he just believed in people. I mean, I got my first check. I was sitting with him saying, Vijay, I'm thinking of doing this education thing. And I would love for you to be my first investor. He calls up his accountant and says, can you bring the checkbook? He signs the check and gives it to me. I'm like, what about the plan? He's like, you can tell that to me later. But here's your check. You know, and I'm not the only one who can tell this story. There are a lot of people I know who can tell the stories about Vijay in a similar manner. So I think he's just incredibly generous with not even money, just, there's a kind-heartedness and generosity about him that is there.
I love this example. And it just talks about the power of meaningful relationships. And when you believe in somebody, you do what it takes to, lift them up with you. So Ishan, you're clearly doing well. You have a strong relationship with the founders. You're doing work at a time when the country, the industry is evolving. Why leave? Because it seems like you were in the startup term on a rocket ship.
Why leave what?
Why leave PayTM and go to take the other EdTech call that you got?
It was interesting. I got connected through a friend with Udacity, but I already knew the CEO of Udacity for a few years because I was running a marketplace in India, right? So I used to talk to all of the global EdTechs also. At one point, I'm the front-running candidate, but I don't want to do EdTech anymore. I'm at FinTech. I'm at PayTM. Demonetization has happened. It's a rocket ship. That's a huge rocket ship. It's not like a tiny thing, right? I mean, I think Evergreen is a better example, like to visualize it. The ship just going, right? And taking everyone along.
Right.
And I'm talking to the CEO of Udacity and he's like, Ishan, why don't you want to do this? The new MD role. I'm like, you're going to be in the Bay Area playing golf. When will I get time to even talk to you? This is going to be very frustrating. I've never seen a happy country manager. And he's like, dude, this is the kind of guy I want. Somebody who's going to be entrepreneurial. So here I am acting like a petulant child, trying to say no. And he's not listening. At some point, and I joke with him now a lot about this, at some point he's telling me, didn't you have a dream to upskill Indians? I said, yes. He said, was the dream fulfilled? I said, no. He said, then I'm offering you a chance to finish your dream. Why aren't you taking this? I'm like, are you trying to hire me? Or are you just getting upset with me? Like, literally, we're having this conversation. And I joke with him. I ran out of ideas to say no to him. And finally, my biggest problem was, who's gonna go and tell Vijay that I'm leaving the next time? Of course, when I
Yeah.
went to Vijay, he was very gracious about it, you know. But like you know, I think Udacity was doing incredible, a great model for India, a services-driven model. So, you know, it was an opportunity of a lifetime that I didn't want to miss, frankly. And I finally stepped back and said, fintech in India, companies like PayTM and many others, abundance of talent coming from everywhere, doing great work. EdTech in India, 2016, 17, still suboptimal. I thought I could do a lot more and like be and feel more impact as someone driving Udacity in India than I could have ever done at PayTM. Because in PayTM, there was still a lot of leaders, right? So for me, it was also about just how much impact can I drive in an absolute sense.
Yeah.
And I felt I could do a lot more at Udacity. So that was my reason of moving off.
Yeah. And it's important, right? Sometimes, even when you're doing well in a rocket ship, sometimes you have to ask yourself, can I have a higher per capita impact somewhere else? Can this pie be grown? So, and plus, EdTech is definitely an underexplored sector. I feel even today,
no, I was just saying I ended up growing the
to
business
do.
by almost 300%. That I grew that business by 300%, built a 50 people team, strong team, you know, repositioned Udacity as a thought leader in the lifelong learning space in India. I mean, you and I met, we had sessions, you to build community.
Yeah, we hosted in your office at Udacity a bunch of our EdTech discussions. You participated in some. In fact, many people who came for those meetups are actually now running really well-funded EdTech companies. So you definitely have had a meaningful role in the space. I noticed the way you were nurturing the team and the way you were building it out. There was a lot of positive energy that was brimming out of there. What were the challenges that you experienced scaling Udacity in India? Things worked well, but like, what did it teach you about India, the country, and EdTech, the industry?
So I think there are challenges at different level. First of all, if you are a GM or a managing director for a region, you have to really ensure that you are helping the global office to understand the challenges, right?
Yeah.
Like that's a big role for in my shoes, right? I'm responsible for the team and for being their representative to the headquarters, right? I think that people underestimate that at times. I think that's one of the biggest responsibilities of a country head for any fast-growing business. That's one challenge. You just have to deal with it, and you have to do it in the right manner, data-driven manner. I think from a business perspective, of course, you know, credentialing, credibility of the business. Does it deliver outcomes or not? Does it get you jobs or not? Those were the kind of challenges. Plus, Udacity had been just branded as a MOOC provider, and company had moved away from MOOCs.
Yeah.
And it completely reformed itself. So, right, like really re-establishing the positioning was a big challenge. It took me almost a year plus participation in conferences like thought leadership, PR management, and all of that to re-establish it as a lifelong learning player in the space. Right? And that was a big challenge. So, I mean, otherwise, there are the typical EdTech challenges. I mean, customer acquisition, delivery. What I learned for myself was when a student pays for a program, he or she is actually committing time for the program.
Yeah.
Value the time and do everything to make that time efficient for the student.
That's a phenomenal insight. The time is of
if you think essence. Of that, if you think of that, you can really deliver student outcomes.
Absolutely.
People think of money, think of time.
I mean, I think this is the insight that a lot of EdTech founders should keep in mind. But then your tenure in India was successful, but not too long, because then you were asked to come join the global headquarters. What was the thinking behind that, and why did you agree with that decision?
Yeah, so two things happened. We wanted to centralize the businesses because we also realized that, you know, instead of having regional businesses, we can combine that in one and drive more efficiency financially. And, you know, I got a call from the founder saying, listen, I want you to manage global student operations. I asked why. He said, the India results have been really good on student outcomes, and we need someone to really drive scale and efficiency there. So I said, sure. How difficult can it be? Well, I was wrong. I've always been very fortunate to have strong operational leaders supporting me, whether it was EduCard or PayTM or Udacity. I think this role of switching on the back end and looking at operations really helped me to build my understanding of education better than ever before, where I was like, this is not just about acquiring students or business or branding or marketing and credibility. Student outcome. And how do you do that? I don't think anybody in the world knows. I am very wary when people come and tell me we know how to drive student engagement. I can write a book today on what not to do. If you ask me what to do, I probably can't even write a page, because it's just so incredibly difficult to drive student engagement.
Right.
Depending on the scale and wherever you are. Right? I mean, you know this better than most people. You're building a community, right? Like, it's just difficult to drive engagement, right?
And
but
sustain that engagement is hard.
And sustain it. Yeah, drive and sustain. I got a front row seat of that experimentation for 2 years. And I had to move here because to US, because my work was with the senior leadership here. There's a lot of work happening from here. And otherwise my life was going just upside down, sitting in India and doing this role. So I moved here and took that opportunity, which is incredible. Loved it. I think from being an entrepreneur in education to being a country leader to being an operational guy, I think that really completed my journey as an EdTech professional in many ways.
Yeah. But I think we haven't discussed one important aspect of your life in this wide-ranging conversation, which is family life. So you're a young father, a husband, son, and so many other things. How has the family taken it, and what do you tell your kid about EdTech and just general careers in life and etc.?
Yeah, that's a great question. He's 3 years old, so he's just turning 3, so not been able to tell a lot, but I'll tell you a few things. I mean, first of all, you cannot do it without a spouse, supporting spouse. It's just not possible. I was very fortunate to marry my closest friend, my best friend. I dated one girl for 10 years and then married her. We've been married for more than 10 years. We've known each other for more part of our life than not. So she knows me better than anybody else. She knows what I'm feeling before I do. And that's incredible for me. And she'll know when I'm feeling good, when I'm feeling bad, when I need a change, when I don't, and all that. So, can't be done without a supporting spouse. But it also means you have to be very respectful of that, and you can't take advantage of that. So I think I've been bad at work-life balance over the years, and she's been incredibly supportive. But over the years, as I went from my 20 to 30s, I started realizing the need of blocking away time. So now I try doing that. She would always tell me, Ishan, if you can't do it in 9 hours, 8, 9 hours, then you're doing something wrong. You should not be expecting yourself and your team to be working 12 hours a day. Fundamentally, there's something missing in your leadership and the way you're setting priorities. She's like, you're right. I didn't understand that in my 20s. She has been giving me this advice for years. I understood it in my 30s, but I now try to block off some time, which is just dedicated to the family. Sometimes I do a good job, sometimes not, but like really trying hard on that. She's supportive. We'll try weekends off. We'll try, and not just for myself, for the team. Team is the same, right? Team is also the person on the other side is also a father or a mother and a parent, child, parent, whatever, right? So trying doing that. And you have to do it from top down. I can't ask people to take holidays and then not take myself. It just doesn't set the right signal, right? I'm going to take a holiday. It took me 3 years to tell my India team to take holidays at New Year. This year, finally, at Udacity, they were like, oh, we are going on a holiday. You're also off. Everybody was off for a few days. And I was so happy that they could all think of taking off and just doing whatever they want to do, right? So I think that's important on the family side, just taking time off and break and managing it on a daily basis. And it has to be done daily. To my son, he's young. He's still 3. I think he's smart. I may be biased. I think he's a sharp cookie. He asks a lot of questions. One of our values as parents is to make him intellectually curious. He sits with me in meetings many times. He'll just poke around the screen, but he'll ask me, how are your colleagues doing? Like he knows their names. He'll ask questions, and sometimes I'll just tell him that, listen, I'm having this thing, that thing. He'll just listen. I don't know how much he understands, but I've also believed, talk to your child, just like you're talking to anyone else. Like I don't have to make all these baby noises and talk to him. Now he's a 3-year-old, and I'll actually tell him that, today I did this with Utkarsh. Maybe I should call you uncle. I don't think so. Just I did this with Utkarsh, and we made a video, and he should see it. And then later on he'll come and sing like Papa, and he'll talk something. I think all of that will add up, hopefully. Right? Yeah. So my favorite joke is when the day he was born, I was telling him LTV, lifetime value. It was just I held him in my arms. We were walking outside in the hospital corridor. I was at Udacity, India. It was the start of the new quarter. It was April, so it was the start of a new quarter and a financial year. That was on my mind. So I'm just telling him like, oh, yeah, there's something called as LTV, lifetime value of customer, and that's where my and his journey started as son parent
Wow,
duo. So
that is incredible.
hopefully, but he'll make his own choices. If we can just instill the right values in him, the
Yeah,
rest is his
and the
game to
right
follow.
curiosity. I
Right
always,
curiosity more than anything else, for sure.
yeah, I think follow your passion is sometimes misinterpreted. What people really mean is, or should mean, I think, is follow your curiosity, because passions
Agree.
change, dreams change. Curiosity is like that unbridled truth, which I
Correct.
think it seems to me that you've been following all through your career. And
And
we
he's
can't
very
wait for
curious
you
as
to
well.
be
He's
back.
very
Yeah.
curious.
Yeah.
He's very
Well,
curious. Love it.
look forward to having you back. And hopefully in some time hosting your son as well as a young prodigy doing really interesting things, following
I
his
don't.
curiosity.
Sometimes I wish that he doesn't turn out to be that, and he's just living a simple life and like being curious and just soaking it all in. There's so much happening.
Wherever curiosity takes him.
Like
Exactly.
his
Yeah.
his default is a self-driving car today, an automated vacuum cleaner at home, right? I just love what the baseline is, and I mean I know I'm very privileged when I say that, but like he will learn from there on. He is living in a different world, right? So I'm really excited to your point of where does his curiosity take him. I'm really
Yeah.
excited to see
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Well, great. This was fascinating, Ishan. Look forward to having you back with us soon. And thank you for all that you do and all that you've done for the entire ecosystem. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Utkarsh. Thanks for having me here. And as always, all my wishes for network capital to continuously grow and being meaningful for so many people. So thank you.